As we discussed yesterday, the parallel investigation into the Trump assassination attempt kicked off this past Monday. Blackwater founder and former Navy SEAL Erik Prince addressed the group of lawmakers and called out the theme of not accountability across government agencies.
In the case of Butler, Pennsylvania, only the disinfectant of transparency and accountability will start to repair the cascading errors that led to the tragedy.
Matthew Peterson, editor-in-chief of Blaze News, and Erik Prince, host of Off Leash with Erik Prince, join me now. So, Erik, thanks so much for your time. Let's get into the parallel investigation. What is your hope for this investigation and everything that is led by Representatives Corey Mills and Eli Crane?
Look, the goal is to have a to-do list of what a next administration should be doing to clean up and make accountable the Secret Service, to restore it to its original glory so that you have a reliable executive protection agency that does not have a constant litany of failures. Because, as I said in my opening statement then, World War I started because of bad diplomatic security. And I cannot imagine the chaos that the assassination, if the assassin was successful, of the chaos that we'd have in America right now.
Erik, I love this because it's an attempt, bold and in front of people, to reclaim accountability for Americans out there. But what would you say to people, and this is a constant worry for a lot of us looking around the scene, what would you say to Americans who are just losing hope that that's even possible? Because they see committee after committee, right, attempt after attempt. What would you say to people out there who think, they'll never get to the bottom of this?
I think most politicians are still chicken, and they care if you get in their face. So if you're upset at the lack of accountability and you get in their face at the next town hall or fundraiser or whatever, and you just show up and let them know, look, we have three tiers of government: local, state, and federal. Local government being the most responsive, the closest to the people. So it works. Our biggest problem is that the federal government has gotten so large and so unaccountable that we allow such second and third rate performance in all of these organizations, whether it's domestic security, international security, in healthcare, all the rest. But getting in people's face and demanding accountability. And as I also said at that hearing, Congress has the power of the purse. And if you demand that Congress not fund certain activities anymore, and especially getting in the appropriators' faces, that's the only way that this gets solved.
You said at the hearing on Monday that after the Iran hostage situation back in 1979, that things changed. The U.S. created the Special Ops Command. So with this, what do you think will change now? Will anything come out of this? What would you like to see?
It's clearly a Secret Service to have to do everything from counterfeiting and bogus credit cards to executive protection at that level. That's hard. So if nothing else, split the function, let some other part of Treasury do the currency investigations, and let the Secret Service be the only and the preeminent executive security function. Just like SOCOM, like I said, Congress created U.S. Special Operations Command, effectively a fifth branch of the armed forces, so that there is dedicated money and focus on the mission to be an extremely good special operations unit. The U.S. Secret Service should be an extremely good executive protection agency. Short of that, we're going to continue to have problem after problem. And if you just go back and enforce very strict meritocracy, I don't care what color people are, what bathroom they use, they have to be extremely good at executive protection and hold to that standard. Clearly, the priorities of Washington have differed from being excellent and merit-based, and that is the root of our problem. And this problem in Butler, Pennsylvania is the tip of the iceberg, because we've seen fail after fail after fail across all kinds of federal agencies because we don't demand accountability and we allow absolute failure. Whether it's, that hearing was held on the anniversary of 13 American kids getting blown up in Afghanistan. It was a completely botched 20-year campaign. No one has been fired. A history of no accountability. And again, so elections should have consequences. Do you believe in a candidate that will deliver accountability, or do you believe in a candidate that will continue the same insanity we've been under for 12 of the last 16 years.
Let's go back to that Butler rally and, outside of the big issues, merit and accountability disappearing. So let's talk about the particulars again. And how do you sum up what the actual security failures on the ground were that day now that some time has gone by?
They did not. So most of executive protection, the most important stuff is done in the advance work before the event happens. You send your people out and you look around and say, you want to view it from a predator's perspective. How am I going to attack that person to affect the assassination they're trying to do? And clearly, no one they just ignored so much to ignore a building, an elevated position, 140 yards away, and didn't have it locked down, that it was outside of their perimeter, is absolutely unimaginable, inexcusable. And as we also talked about, there's a line where you go so far deep into incompetence that when does malice start? Second, when the shots did start, that his detail did not immediately move him off the X. And the X is the point where someone's chosen to attack you, and they didn't move him immediately. Now, yeah, that image of Trump standing up with that defiant fist, fight, 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 good on him, great instincts. Really bad on his detail, because he should have been horizontal, completely covered, and not exposed at all to any other incoming fire. For all the conspiracies about there being a second shooter, right there, as you see on the screen, that's where the second shooter should have been shooting. But they weren't, because there was no second shooter, I don't believe.
Erik, what about these reports about the fact that the shooter is on these different apps, related to foreign countries? I'm sitting here, editor-in-chief. I've looked at different reports. It's not really clear to me how much we know. But what do you know?
I've heard that there was, the image that you started this broadcast with was that is not an amplified scope, meaning you look through it, it's one power, it's some kind of red dot. I think it's a holosun site. That's not going to give him much amplification. So thankfully, he chose the wrong scope for the job, because my 12-year-old son, hunting deer, could have made that shot. I'm fortunate. We're glad that he aimed at the president's head, because if he'd aimed center mass, he would have hit. He would not have missed his ear by a couple centimeters. Ostensibly, he had explosive devices with a pretty sophisticated firing device in his vehicle and some on his person. I'd like to understand how he learned to make those, where he learned, where he bought the supplies from that, and how, when they did sweep his house, it seemed to be extremely clean and sanitized already. There's a lot of other details around that are very, very troubling.
So we got the images today that we've already shown on the screen, but the FBI also came out and said that the shooter became hyper-focused on the Butler, Pennsylvania rally, and the FBI has yet to pin down a motive. Here we are, almost, 7 weeks out from the shooting? How unusual is this that we're waiting this long to get just any of this information coming out from these federal agencies?
Because maybe they acknowledge how badly they screwed up. They know how most Americans, or many Americans, view the FBI as quite compromised and hyper political, and so anything they say is going to be super analyzed. So I'm sure they're very, very, very cautious. I hope they actually put some experienced, nonpartisan professionals on this. That's why I'm in favor. That's why I went to that hearing on Monday, because I think a truly independent panel of experts, and easy to find far greater experts than me, especially on sniping and on the tradecraft, the explosives, all those things need to be really dug into, because, John F. Kennedy was killed in 1963, and we're still debating, was there one shooter or two, or what happened, and all the other swirl of data around that? Unacceptable. Like I said, only full transparency will disinfect and get the rot out, and make it so that we have confidence in these federal agencies to actually do their jobs again.
I could not agree more. And exactly like you said, we need to avoid another JFK situation. There's no reason in America for us to have decades of conspiracy theories. We need to get to the truth. So we all appreciate what you're doing there. Last question. I'm curious, it's on a lot of the audience's minds, and no one talks about it. I'm curious if you know anything or have watched, on TV and seen the Trump security detail now. Have they changed anything? What do we know about how he's being secured now going into the election?
So the event in Butler was the last public event before the convention. And truly, we talked about this at the hearing on Monday. He was regarded as a former president and another candidate, not the nominee, even though he had been the nominee really effectively for very, very many months. There was only 4 post-standers, Secret Service agents, assigned to Trump's event that day. Jill Biden, also in Western Pennsylvania, the same day, had 12 assigned to her for a much smaller indoor venue. And this is a woman that has no statutory or constitutional authority. She's the spouse of the president, but yet they put 3 times as many people on her. I call that problematic, because it's, at what point is the disinterest or incompetence? How far does that go until it tips towards malice?